Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. So you already know if you watch my videos that I'm a physical media person. I only buy records and CDs and videos, DVDs, and Laserdiscs, but I'm also a voracious reader. I probably read about 15 books a year, and I also read classic rock magazines, and I only read physical books and magazines. So here I'm going to do a book review of the four most recent rock books that I read. In fact, I just finished this Tom Petty book today. Finished it about an hour ago. So if you're new to my channel, please hit subscribe. Please help my channel to grow. Mostly rock and roll, but horror movies and some other stuff as well. And here's my first book reviews. So let's start with the bad. Pamela DeBar's legendary Groupie, and had relationships with Jimmy Page and others, and famous best-selling author of I'm With the Band, a book that I read whenever that came out, decades ago, I guess. I saw this book, Let's Spend the Night Together, Backstage Secrets of Rock Muses and Super Groupies, and that's exactly what it is. It's a thick book, and what it is it's a good concept, Pamela. She went out and she traveled and she interviewed other super groupies like herself. And we're talking about, she interviewed some groupies I never heard of, but also Cherry Vanilla and Gail Zappa, who wound up marrying Frank Zappa, and Cynthia Plasticaster, who you may know from the Kiss song, but she did plastic casts of famous rock stars' penises, most notably Jimi Hendrix. And Cassandra Peterson is in here. Now, that was one I didn't know. And Cassandra Peterson, if you recognize the name, is Elvira. So apparently she was a groupie and had a pretty wild lifestyle before she became Elvira. So that was kind of interesting. There she is as Elvira. So these groupies, they Sweet Connie, who of course is famous from the Grand Funk song, we're an American band. And the Butter Queen is in here. There is lots and lots of people. And this is hardcore sex, drugs, and rock and roll, for sure. If you want to read about different penis sizes and what it's like for some of these rock stars in bed and what they smell like and the lifestyle of these super groupies, then this book is for you. I got to tell you, and I'm no prude, I got nothing against pornography. In fact, I find the pornography industry really fascinating. I read about it. But it's kind of like porn. There's only so much you could take. I mean, there's only so much you could watch people having sex before it gets boring. And I found this book to be like that. It's kind of the same story over and over again. And I'm no psychiatrist, but most of these women are pretty damaged, and some of them were damaged beforehand, and they kind of try to justify, I think, what they're doing, by saying they're the muse of these artists, and, it's for the love of the music, and it gets them closer to the music, to sleep with hundreds, if not thousands of these musicians. But a lot of these musicians I've never heard of. They're not all... And I can understand somebody that want to sleep with Robert Plant or Jimmy Page or Mick Jagger or the top tier. But a lot of these people, they're playing in sleazy clubs and they're on their way up if they ever make it up. I don't know. For me, I found it a slog. And I really had to force myself to finish this book. And I did. But I was really glad it was over. So let's spend the night together. Well, listen, if you just want to read couple of 100 pages, almost 400 pages of sex, drugs, and rock and roll by women who just want to sleep with thousands or hundreds and hundreds of men. And I'm not judging them. That I have nothing against sex. If that's what you want to do, more power to you. But it kind of reminded me of the end of Almost Famous, the Cameron Crowe movie where she called herself a Band-Aid, and he kind of lashed at her, and he says, don't you have any respect? Don't you realize they just throw you away, and there's thousands of you to these. You don't really mean anything. You're really not a muse. I mean, some of them might be a muse. Pamela DeBar, I guess, to a certain extent, was a muse for Jimmy Page or whoever, but I don't know. Left me real cold. That's that one. Let's go to the opposite side of the spectrum. This book is one of the best books I've ever read. I just finished it. And this is called Conversations with Tom Petty. And I have never heard of the author, Paul Zolo, but apparently he's a singer-songwriter and a famous interviewer of musicians, a magazine editor of a magazine, Song Talk. This is the greatest interview I've ever seen in my life. This is also 300 some pages of interviews with Tom Petty. It's in chronological order. It goes through his life, and then it goes album by album and almost song by song. And Tom Petty pulls no punches. You really learn a lot about his craft and how seriously he takes it, and his ups and downs, and covers some drugs. He talks about Harry Epstein, a bass player in the Heartbreakers, who passed away from drugs and destroyed his life. And he talks about that. And Tom Petty is an open book. He doesn't shy away. He talks about his divorce. And if you like Tom Petty, this is an incredible read. It's fantastic. And again, these are the kind of books I love because, listen, there's a lot of people who know a lot about music. I know a lot about music. I haven't written any book, but if I did, it's just my opinion and the knowledge I've learned really from other people. When you can read a book straight from the horse's mouth, it reminds me of, there's an Allman Brothers book called One Way Out, which is also a phenomenal book. And that was the history of the Allman Brothers, but it was strictly from interviews from the different various members of the band, where I learned the Allman Brothers were not brothers. You know, I mean, it was a brutal band and lawsuits and hating each other and all from their mouth. And Tom Petty covers that, why he does solo records versus Heartbreakers, and why, you know, Stan Lynch was the drummer in the Heartbreakers and then he had to leave the band because of ego issues. It covers a lot of ground, and he really goes in depth of the music. It's really neat when you see a songwriter, and Tom Petty is so great, and such a stellar career he had and still has, even though he's deceased. But he knows it all. You know, he remembers when he recorded and wrote each song and who was playing, and it's nice, you know, when he takes it seriously, and it's all right here. This book is phenomenal. This is a cool book, and you might notice I'm wearing a 1981 vintage Rolling Stones t-shirt, and no, I didn't buy this now. I bought this in 1981, and I'm lucky it still fits me. Bought this at the concert in 81. How cool is this book? This is a book called Vintage Rocks T-Shirts. This is a hardcover book, really thick, and amazingly, it's actually, I don't know if the guy's famous, but it's signed by the author right there. And all this book is a picture book. Sorry about my dog barking. This is a picture book of vintage T-shirts. And actually kind of depressing for me in a certain extent, because I saw in this book, it's got like old Led Zeppelin T-shirts that I actually had. And before this stuff became valuable, I used to just throw them out when I couldn't fit in them anymore. And now, apparently, even the shirt I'm wearing right now, the Stones 81 T-shirt, apparently goes for a good chunk of money. I don't know who buys used T-shirts, but I guess somebody does. But this book is really beautiful and really well presented, as you can see. And all it is just vintage rock T-shirts. I mean, look at that. Genesis, the famous Charisma label. And just really cool T-shirts. The Who and Zeppelin and the Stones. And then it even goes into, there's Genesis from 73 and Pink Floyd and Queen and Camel. It goes deep. There's Cream magazine. My favorite magazine is Pink Floyd Animals Tour. I had the goddamn shirt from 1977. Idiot I am. I don't have it anymore. Love You Live, the Stones, and Exile, and Who the Fuck Are the Rolling Stones, and a Goat's Head Soup shirt, etc. Led Zeppelin. This is just a... Oh, did I just see Nectar? There was Nectar, one of my favorite prog bands. Where do you see that too often? So, really beautiful book. I don't know where you would find this. Sex Pistols. It goes into punk as well. This is a magnificent book. If you could find it maybe on eBay or something. I found that at a used record store. I paid like $5, so sweet deal that one was. Last but not least, this book came out many years ago. I finally picked it up and I read it, and it was a kind of a clever idea. It's a little bit dated. It's called The Greatest Albums You'll Never Hear. And as you know, if you follow bands, you know, a lot of bands are always recording, and songs don't make the albums, and sometimes they're working on an album and it just they just drop it. They don't finish it, you know. So this talks about legendary albums, the Beach Boys' Smile. Now, of course, they've since put out a version of it. Well, Brian Wilson did, and the Kinks, and you know, some legendary kind of albums that were being worked on that just were never done and never finished, never released. You know, like Jimi Hendrix' fourth studio record, some Bee Gees there. But it even talks about like the Who Lifehouse. They kind of got creative here. Those are not the actual album covers because the albums don't exist. But if they did, they kind of thought it would look like that. The Stones' legendary 72 tour, they never released the live album that was supposed to come out. Human Highway, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. What else is in here? Springsteen. Oh, this one actually came out, actually. What is Homegrown Neil Young. He actually did finally release a version of that. Spunk, Chrome Dreams, Neil Young's another one. He kind of released portions of that later on. It's kind of a cool idea. This is one, the Springsteen, The Ties That Bind, was going to be the original version of, you know, The River, but of course in the River Super Deluxe box set, he actually did put that in there. So kind of a neat idea. Electric Nebraska. Cool kind of a concept, and I found it pretty enjoyable, and it goes on and on. So kind of a neat idea. Bruno McDonald and the greatest albums you'll never hear. So there you go. 4 of the most recent books I've read, rock and roll oriented, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please hit subscribe. Check out my other videos, and maybe like once or twice a year I'll do a video of books that I've just read. I have a backlog like of CDs and Laserdiscs. I got a backlog of books this high that I'm going to be reading. So and I got to decide what's going to be next up. Well, we'll see. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Please check out my videos. Please hit subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Help my channel to grow so when people search, I'll actually pop up and get some subscribers. Have a great night. I'll see you next time.